Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, political fighters. Welcome to the August 18th, 2026 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278 is our number. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. WARR is how we broadcast down in North Carolina, and KTNF up in Minnesota, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Email me at richard@WCPT820.com, and I hope I've been able to catch. I got caught up a little bit, Devin, on some of my emails. I've gotten a couple days behind, so you guys, I hope I fired back either your answers or a thank you or whatever the case may be. Follow me on all the socials under Choose Views and catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and of course, iHeartRadio. There you can get all of our good stuff. Choose Views featured interviews, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, Patty Vasquez driving it home. It's The Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other great shows and interviews. In the evening, stick around and make sure you're catching the Politics Bar, the Matt McNeil Show, and the Gailey Show. Over at heartlandsignal.com, which is your like and share repository, and you go over there, you like it and go, oh, that's cool. Let me share it with my cousin who's stuck on silliness when it comes to politics. Just having some fun. Great article. Florida's Democratic candidate, as you heard last week, and former GOP Representative David Jolly says that he looks at certain things in a certain way, and that we have to remember that we don't think that the problem in politics are people who change. The problem is the people who won't change. Such a great quote. It's not the people who change, it's the people who won't change. Texas Senate candidate James Tallarico releases an ad touting the endorsement of an attorney who had his $1,000 Mont Blanc pen stolen by Ken Paxton back in 2012. Vote for James Tallarico. He won't steal your pen. It's pretty good, guys. It's pretty good. So some nice stuff over at heartlandsignal.com. This upcoming city council meeting that the Michigan police are bolstering the security around due to a planned Christian nationalist anti-Islam protest from none other than January 6th rioter Jake Lang, who you guys know is walking around with a, what's that thing that you have on your ankle? House arrest kind of thing, which is kind of weird. But the chief of police, Issa Shaheen, warns the residents, stay at home, don't take the bait, and stay peaceful. So please, guys, make sure that that is what you do if you decide to go. If you're in Michigan, if you're in the Dearborn area and you decide to go to the rally, just be smart. Don't take the bait. Just laugh at the fools that are there. Let them say what they're going to say. And if things get a little bit silly, then make sure you're protecting the people that you attend the event with or the council meeting with. On today's show, we've got three guests, 6:37 and 7:30. Who are they? Jameson Firestone, author of the new memoir, Rules of Lies, My Wild Ride Through Chaos, Corruption, and Murder in Putin's Russia. We'll be talking with Jameson in the 6:30 hour. Anderson Clayton, who is the chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, and some new news coming out of North Carolina that we'll want to share with you guys. And Ohio State Representative Dooney Isaacson out of Cincinnati, the minority leader of the Ohio House of Representatives, will be with us in the 7:30 hour. Feel free to give us a call. We may take some calls when Anderson is on. If you guys have some questions you want to ask her or ask us around what's happening in North Carolina politics. Another state that's got some great things going on. Obviously, Roy Cooper is running for U.S. Senate, and some state elections that are really critical to changing the balance of power in the state legislature in North Carolina, which is true for us in so many states. I've said this 2.5 years now. We have to take back state legislatures as much as we fight for our federal offices, because by taking back the state legislatures, we were then able to stem the tide when it comes to gerrymandering and redistricting. We also are able to stem the tide when it comes to policy that needs to be in place to take care of the citizens of a particular state. So Anderson will be talking with us about that, as well as some of the national things that she's seeing when it comes to the Democratic Party. So I'm excited to have her on. And we haven't talked to Dooney Isaacson in a few weeks, but I know that he will be able to bring us some updates on what's happening in Ohio. We've got important two big races there in terms of the Senate race with just drew a blank on his name, but it'll come to me in a second. Sherrod Brown, as well as the governor's race with Dr. Amy Acton. We got to get that one, both of those. So as you can see, we have a ton of races going on. We have a ton of opportunity. And when I talk about, when I get to something to chew on today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Democratic excitement. We'll get to that in a moment. But that's who we have hanging out with us today. And I want to bring you guys the question of the day and then chat a little bit about that. Okay. The Dems take back all of Congress. I've asked this question a few months ago, but I want to ask it now again because some things have changed. We've had some significant wins. So, guys, the Dems take back all of Congress, not just the House, but also the Senate. Who do you want to see as House Speaker and Senate Majority Leader? Currently, the House Minority Leader is House Minority Leader is Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Minority Leaders, both, I should say, are Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. Do you want to see them to stay in place, or are you thinking of someone new and different? And there are no wrong answers. I just want to know what you guys are thinking about, excuse me, in that space. Who should it be? And I think that the more we talk about that, the more we are in line with the attitude of so many of the voters today. That's not to say that the change needs to happen, but that will be determined. Here's the best part about it. If we get to the fact that we get to vote on who the Senate Majority Leader will be and the House Majority Leader will be, that in and of itself is a huge thing to be voting on. Which means that we've taken back those levels of power. So no matter who it is, it's going to be better than where we have right now with regard to John Thune in the Senate and Mike Johnson in the House. So if it ends up being Schumer or Jeffries, we're far better off. And you may not have all the love in the world for either of them, but we are going to be better off across the board than having Thune and Johnson remain in those positions, which means we take back the House and Senate. So I want to hear what you guys, who your choices are. And a little bit of why. It will be helpful to give me some context as to why you may select who you select. But let us know, because that's going to be that's going to be part of our reality. I'm strongly believing that. And what an exciting time! I guess exciting is a good word to use in the event that we are in that position. So let me know. We take back Congress, House and Senate. Who do you want to see as House Speaker and Senate Majority Leader? Let me know. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. Guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. Thanks for being with us this morning. If you're just tuning in, I am Richard Chew. Already got a couple of responses, but we'll save those for a couple of minutes and for a moment or two. Let's hit them with a couple of quick Chew's Views news items. On this August 18th, 2026, the NAACP's Office of General Counsel is joining the legal team focused on the death of Nolan Wells. quote, drawing on the association's long history of pushing for full and fair investigations when black lives are lost under suspicious circumstances, we will bring additional investigative and legal resources to bear and ensure that no stone is left unturned in the quest for truth and accountability for Nolan's family. That comes from Kristen Clark, the NAACP General Counsel. Good work there. Americans are turning their backs on a summer mainstay. Summertime should be peak beef season, but not this year. For almost 2 years, prices have been rising. Americans have seen seem to be tapping out when it comes to beer. Sales volumes fell 0.03% year over year in the 13 weeks ending the mid-July notch up that normally takes place. Sweltering temps strain Italy's Parmesan cheese banks. Italy's cheese banks and the $4.7 billion Parmigiano Reggiano industry are being strained by Europe's record summer temperatures, according to Fortune magazine. Since 1953, Bank Credito Emiliano has accepted collateral for loans in the form of cheese wheels, which must age in specific temperatures for years and are now tracked with the blockchain technology as farmers keep inventory on site. But record heat has boosted cheese's cooling costs and reduced some of the milk yields. How about that? Amazon updates its terms to deter legal action. Believe it or not, Amazon has updated its user agreement. So pay attention to this, guys, to discourage class action lawsuits against the e-commerce giant. Shoppers were informed via email that they must now resolve disputes without court intervention, except for certain small claims. For 5 years earlier, Amazon removed similar language from its user agreement as the company faced an onslaught of private lawsuits tied to its Alexa devices. Critically, the updated terms do not amount to a waiver of individual legal protections and may not be upheld in court. So in other words, Amazon people will still come after you, as they should if the device is doing voice technology grabs, which is what this is all about through Alexa. And to woo Gen Z fashion retailers, the move is into mending. Last but not least, major fashion retailers from Levi's to Zara are joining the Gen Z trend in mending clothing, according to the Associated Press. They're catering to younger shoppers with an interest in sustainability and saving money, offering in-store repair services, even sewing workshops. At Uniqlo, services include sashiko, the Japanese technique of using embroidery to reinforce fabric. While these initiatives may not have much of an impact environmentally, considering production is still increasing, they put a halo on the brand, according to Neil Saunders. So there you go, guys. A couple of quick Choose Views news items on this August 18th, 2026. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, if you're listening to WCPT, for those listening to us, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls and talking to Julie Rodzinski, author of Salty Politics newsletter on Substack and co-founder of the nonprofit Lift Our Voices. YouTube content creator and podcaster Adam Mockler and Paul Lisnek, multi-Emmy award-winning TV host who served as political and legal analyst at WGN for 18 years. He is also the author of 15 books and host of Curtain Call Chicago and Paul on Politics, live, local, and progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT, heartlandsignal.com, and TuneIn. For my listeners tonight on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by John Marcus, higher education journalist at the Heshinger Report and co-host of the public radio podcast College Uncovered. His latest article is Once Globally Preeminent, U.S. Universities Are Sliding into Decline. Dan Ashurst, Executive Director of Fair Vote Illinois. Jen Schroeder, workplace advocate for professionals over 45 and founder of The Unobsolete, where she fights age bias and builds extra exit strategies. Estrielta Harmon, Executive Director of the Center for Better Aging. All joining Patty, Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT, Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And guess what? Tomorrow's Wednesday. We'll be talking with former FBI agent, hostage negotiator, and national security expert that was also a candidate for Congress, Philip Andrew. Of course, it's Wednesday, so Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 will be joining us. And filmmaker, journalist, and author of several New York Times bestsellers, Greg Palast, along with Edward Ward, voting rights expert from Chicago and fellow of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Greg and Ed have collaborated on a 6-part documentary series, Jim Crow Reloaded, to save your vote. So that's who's going to be joining myself, Patty, and Joan today and tomorrow. So make sure you tune in. We'll give you a little bit of a reminder again later in the show on who's plugging in with us. All right. Let's get to a couple of quick items, namely something to chew on here today, August 18th, 2026. All right, what should Democrats be excited about? There's a lot to be excited about, but there's a lot of conversation coming from corporate media that still wants to try to put Democrats in the box of saying Democrats in disarray, or leading their story with titles like, "It seems like the Democrats may." And I know that the corporate media, part of their attraction is to tease and to make people think that maybe something is or is not going to happen. It's part of their DNA, frankly. They want to tease you. So what Democrats should be excited about heading into 2026 midterms, there's actually a number of reasons to be optimistic, and I want to be one of the voices that continues to remind us of that. Don't let anyone fool you into apathy, because that is part of the game that's coming from the White House, the administration, and the cabinet, and certainly the GOP at large, is to fool you into apathy. Don't let that happen. There's some highly favorable expanding conversations around this. And one of the biggest reasons is the influx of energetic and new candidates. A large number of new candidates running on the Democratic side, more than people on a national level are really talking about. And these are both in state elections as well as federal. Recent polling and projections from Decision Desk HQ gives Democrats a narrow but clear 226 to 209 edge to retake the House majority. A lot of times the conversation around this is the Dems could win, the Dems could win, the Dems could win. But when you put some numbers to it, which I like to do, helps us have a better understanding, a better visual of what this actually looks like. 226 to 209 to retake the House majority. Keep that in your mind when you're talking to folks about this. Additionally, the path of the Senate majority has shifted from a long shot to a distinct possibility due to what? The slipping approval ratings for President Donald Trump amid the global economic uncertainty and our own U.S. economic uncertainty. So Democrats have a right to see competitiveness in key battleground states where there are big Senate races, and we know them: North Carolina, Ohio, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas. We know that those races are more than close, and there are races that we are leaning in the positive. Corporate media has no incentive whatsoever. Even MS Now has no incentive to really speak to that on a regular basis. So we have to do that. So I wanted to provide you guys with a little bit more data and information. Trust advantages are some of the key issues. And what do I mean by that? According to data from the Data for Progress, swing voters trust Democrats significantly more than Republicans on several of the election's highest priority issues, starting with health care, a commanding, check this out, 31-point trust advantage on health care for Democrats. Entitlements, a 30-plus point advantage on protecting Social Security and Medicare. 30-plus point advantage. Inflation and cost of living, a narrow but crucial 34 to 26% trust lead over Republicans in swing states. Okay? That's a big A deal, as Joe Biden would say. So when people talk about it with some data. And if you guys want more information and more of this data, I'll send it to you. Just send me an email at richard@wcpt820.com, and I will send you what I put together. Turnout and engagement is the other one that is sometimes harder to measure But if people are looking for some changes in this space, it's look at some of the high-profile elections. A good example is Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan's Senate nomination in Michigan, and in Minnesota, and David Crowley's gubernatorial nomination in Wisconsin. These are candidates that have energized the base. And by energizing the base, we're going to see more people show up. So I'll keep this close to me for those of you who want some of these numbers, and I'll send them to you via email. So just send me an email at richard@wcpt820.com. But there you go today. Something to chew on. All right. Before we take this quick break, we have a couple of thoughts. Let's see. Sam, in terms of question of the day, John Ossoff for Senate Majority Leader. Okay, I can get with that. And let's see what we have. Nancy says Adam Schiff for the Senate, Jamie Raskin or Jasmine Crockett for the House. They are not afraid of resisting Trump. There you go. I think Jasmine Crockett might not be an option. Well, she still could be House. She could still be the House Majority Leader because she doesn't have to be a member of Congress according to the rules. But there you go. Schiff and Raskin. And let's see who else pops up. All right, we'll pass on that one. This person always has something crazy to say. All right, the music's playing. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. This is Chew's Views. If you're just tuning in, and of course, I'm Richard Chew. Imagine what it would be like to graduate from law school, work your behind off, do all the things that someone that put in all of that time and all those hours in the law library and wherever else. I remember those days. And then decide, because you are a good kind of global citizen, that you're going to start a law firm. Not down the street, mainstream Chicago or New York or Boston or LA or DC, but you're going to start a law firm in Moscow. I mean, you got to check somebody's bloodline. You got to check somebody's what the heck were you thinking in doing that? But I yield and give all the props to Jameson Firestone, author of the new memoir, Rule of Lies. My wild ride through chaos, corruption, and murder in Putin's Russia. We got to make a movie out of this book. Good morning, Jameson, and welcome to Chew's Views.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, man, we can hear you fine.
Fantastic. Glad to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I mean, I meant everything I just said, man. I'm serious. Who in the hell? My sister says things to me like, when you walk down the steps, hold onto the railing, okay? Just be careful. So talk to us, Jameson. Welcome to the show. It's nice to meet you for the very first time. Congratulations on the book. It's amazing. And I just need you to talk to us, man. Tell us about you. I talked about you and graduating from Tulane Law School, but tell us more about your background and what brought you to this point.
So I've got a really kind of crazy background. I was born in Beverly Hills to a really well-off family. As a matter of fact, if you ever saw the movie Down and Out in Beverly Hills, that was the house that I was brought up in. And then my parents went down and out, and they lost everything. They moved to New York, got divorced, but my dad made a lot of money, and all of a sudden it was all back. And my mom was on Park Avenue, and my dad had a 6-floor townhouse, and we had a yacht past the Hamptons, and captain and crew. And when I was about 15, and I never knew where my dad made his money. He was always really careful, cagey, whenever I asked him what he did. Right? And then one day when I'm 15 years old, the police come to the door and handcuff him. And apparently the way my dad was making his money was a little Bernie Madoff-y. I mean, he was essentially defrauding investors in the IRS of tens of millions of dollars. So he was a huge tax cheat and investor scammer. And while awaiting trial, my dad started to go nuts because it was a criminal trial. And so he sent me to a 5-day boarding school. and then went completely nuts when the kids were out of the house. So he started doing crack. He bought New York's most expensive brothel, and he started hanging out with contract killers and with loan sharks. And I was coming home to this every weekend at age 15, to this house that looked like something out of Tom Cruise's Risky Business, basically. And I got this kind of first-class education, among other things, in how to deal with the mob, because all these guys started making plans for me, right? Like I was going to go to college, I was going to come out of college, I was going to be running a dry cleaning business. The boys working for the dry cleaning business. I mean, they actually could be working there, but I was going to be paying them, you see?
Yeah.
And I did, but I really didn't want to do this. I mean, it's like bad enough to have your dad going to jail, right? But I didn't want to go. So I had to learn how to talk to these people and how to say no. And it's a bit like talking to the New York or Chicago police, right? They really only accept two answers, yes or no. And you have to show respect at all times. And should you fail to do these things, very bad things happen to you very quickly. And so I had to learn how to engineer a no by making them think that I was so useless and helpless, hopeless, that I was just going to screw up any business that they put me in and we'd all go to jail, right? And so I learned how to get out of these situations. And then when I was in law school, which had a wonderful thing of getting me out, my dad was in prison by that point. I was trying to think, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I had read this article about all the changes Gorbachev was making in Russia and all the opportunity. And I thought I would really love to go, but I have 2 years of law school ahead of me before I graduate. And so I kind of just forgot about it for 2 weeks. And then I got this envelope in the mail from my dad in prison, right? And I open it up, and it's just the same article that I had read with a little post-it on it. It goes, Jamie, you must go.
Wow.
And so, so I just thought about it, and I basically hopped the first plane to Russia after taking the bar exam without an idea of what I would do. I didn't want to found a law firm initially. But what kind of happened, and it was crazy, was my dad got out of prison, and I made the very bad move of going into business with him, where we would buy used cars in America and send them to Russia. My dad then moved to Russia and basically got involved with the whole Russian mob and brought them into our business. And
Daisy was abandoned by her family and placed in foster care at 15 years old.
I just set up a business in Russia in the early 1990s. It was 1993, this car business. And I learned how to help foreigners come into Russia. And all these foreigners were pouring in. And I thought, there's got to be a lot of money in having a law firm to help all these guys who were coming into Russia. And there were some other law firms, but they were like the really big firms where they were like, if you want to register a company, we'll charge you like $20,000. And there were a whole bunch of guys like me who were right out of school, or, who just hopped planes, kind of, maverick businessmen without a lot of money, but with a lot of ideas, and they couldn't pay those rates. So we set up the law firm in 93, and that's how I accidentally ended up owning a law firm.
Man, the statement that I'm about to make is one I'm sure you've heard before, but I would also think that our listeners could say as well. I mean, this listens, reads, hears like a doggone, global spy novel. It's just, I mean, I can't get, the Bond movie from Russia with Love out of my head. I can't get all kinds of stories about. I'm just being honest, Jameson. I'm not making light of it at all. But it listens like that. But it ended up being one of the foundational things that gave you a kind of a peek into as the title says, it is a wild ride on the chaos, the corruption, and murder in Putin's Russia. And so I'm sure that people are going to ask this question. You've been asked it before. Once you got started, and were you actually someone giving advice to? Because at this time, and if I have my dates right, in the early '90s for sure, this whole the word oligarch that we hear now in our political discourse in America. I mean, we really weren't using that word a lot back in the late '80s or early '90s, but it started to become a word that we used a lot because of all the transitions that took place in Russia. And so now we got this the break aparts and the old, the statement from from a few years prior from Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall and blah, blah, blah. So what were you actually doing when it comes to legal advice? Because a lot of stuff was moving around at that time. So were guys rolling up on you saying, hey, man, listen, here's 20 grand and I need you to help me get this business open?
I still remember the first time a client gave me $5,000. I was a kid out of college. I had $100,000 in student debt, $30,000 on the credit cards, and 2 years. You get 2 years grace before you have to start paying this stuff. And I'd already used a year and a half. But so it started small, but it was weird. So like I was helping people like set up a golf club in Moscow, set up a pizzeria, sell timeshare.
He was selling timeshare
to people, right? To the Russians, they're weak in the sun. But then it got, you don't normally, I guess if we had the internet back then and we didn't have the internet, we had email, but you wouldn't put on your website, father's a criminal raised in a brothel around a bunch of mafiosi. But it turned out that Russia went all mafia in the 90s. And so you have all these mafia groups that are protection rackets running around. And if your business looks like they're doing good, all of a sudden you got a bunch of thugs telling you got to pay them every week, right? And I had clients who were telling me, Jamie, would you come down? Like we're having problems with our mafia group, which they would call the roof. And I would like go down and talk to the boys, and I could talk to the boys, and I would tell them how they're disappointing. And occasionally I would fire groups of killers, right? And they'd be like, what did you just say? I'm like, what I said is, you've explained everything very nicely, and you guys are great, and we love you. But it's not the service we thought we were getting, so we're going to have to let you go. And they were just, well, wait, no, you don't understand. You can't let us go. I'm like, it'll cost you twice as much when you need more help. And I would be like, no, that's great. You'll be the first people we go to when we need that help. And so I started with that craziness, helping all these small businesses set up companies, but also deal with their mafia groups. And then the crime got more organized. And I mean, I gave an example in my own firm when I took in more partners. I took in some accounting partners that started to do all sorts of crazy things, basically break the law. And I couldn't get rid of them because we were equal partners. And I finally had to hire a private SWAT team and raid my offices with AK-47s, right? And explain on the business end of a submachine gun that our partnership was over, that this was just done. Wow. And then, you would get like, you would get things like these guys who'd been stealing would then bribe the police to cause me problems. And I'd find myself like unable, I'd be filing, I'm a lawyer. I own a law firm. I've got 30 lawyers working for me for free. Right. And all of a sudden everything I filed is being ignored, and everything these crooks are filing is being acted upon because they're paying the police and I'm not. And finally I lost my temper with the whole thing. Right. And I flew to New York and I went to this place called the Spy Shop on Madison Avenue. And I bought these hidden cameras and stuff. And we bugged the offices of the Russian police to catch these guys in action. So that's how crazy it was. But I started small. So I didn't get to your question about oligarchs and stuff. Eventually, so the oligarchs came into being in the early 90s. They were not my clients. But later, in the Putin years, when real Western money started to pour into Russia, and when all these investors started coming in, I got this idea, and it was like, okay, if like big investment funds are going to come in and buy hundreds of millions of dollars of Russian stocks, I can help them do that. I can do all the legal, I can do all the accounting, I can run it in the background for them. And I hired this guy, Sergei Magnitsky, who was an auditor, to run it all. And then my little idea, all of a sudden I had $3.5 billion of money. So, this kid out of school who had $130,000 in debt, never worked for a law firm in my life. All of a sudden I own a law firm that's got like 200 serious clients at any given time, and I'm managing $3.5 billion in the background. Now that's not oligarch money. That was mostly huge Western investors. But it was pretty crazy, right? Jamison,
let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about the Magnitsky affair and the legal, how things got weaponized at that point, and a little bit about Brother Vladimir. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. I'm Richard Chew, if you're just tuning in. Fascinating conversation this morning with Jameson Firestone, who is the author of Rule of Lies, My Wild Ride Through Chaos, Corruption, and Murder in Putin's Russia. All right, a lot of people have heard, but they're not quite sure of who Sergei Magnitsky is and how he was a hugely influential party in things that took place in the early 90s and now forward. Talk to us a little bit about that situation.
Here I was with my now successful law firm managing this $3.5 billion in the background. And I used to joke with my clients, there are two things you could do in Russia that are really dangerous. One is get involved in politics under Vladimir Putin, and the other is make so much money that other people notice, right? And one of my clients, one of the investor clients, Hermitage Capital, run by a man named Bill Browder, did both. He got involved in politics by essentially investing in companies and then exposing the corruption, and he made too much money, and that he had the best performing investment fund in the world 2 years in a row. And so he had about $2 billion under management, all of which we were running. And Sergei Magnitsky was the guy who was running it all in the background. So Bill's investment fund would say, we want to buy 100,000 shares of this or sell 1 million shares of that. But the guy who had to actually calculate taxes that had to be paid and what forms you had to fill out and give to the government was Sergei. And so Bill, who kept going after corruption, gets thrown out of the country by Vladimir Putin, because Vladimir Putin, of course, liked corruption because a lot of this money was going into his pocket. And so at that point, Bill decides he's going to close down everything he's got. He's going to sell $2 billion worth of stuff, pay $500 million in taxes, and he's out. And that's what he does. And so a strange thing happened. So after he did this, we just had these empty companies, and our job and Sergei's job was to close the companies, file all the forms, make sure all the taxes are paid, and that's it, and the companies. And all of a sudden, my offices are raided by like 25 plainclothes officers, including forensic accountants, and they rip apart my office like the way you see police raids and SWAT raids on TV, and they pull all these files off our shelves, and they've got police accountants going through the books. They go, this company has paid a lot of taxes. Shall we take it? Yeah. And we're sitting there scratching our heads like, why would the police rip apart our offices to find companies that have paid a lot of taxes? And we couldn't figure it out. And we kept complaining after the police left. Like, you ripped apart you shut us down. You took everything. You took out all the computers except one. Why did you do this? This doesn't make any sense. And then one day we find out that 3 of our clients' companies have been sued for $1 billion, and they've lost $1 billion in court. And we're the lawyers. We were supposed to be there, man. Like, how do you have a court case without lawyers, right? and so Sergei investigates. How do you have a court case without lawyers? How could this happen? And what he finds out is that those police raids, they were just a pretext to take all these documents that the police and some of their criminal partners needed to hijack control of 3 of my clients' companies, 3 companies that had paid $250 million in taxes and were now basically dead. But they needed control of these companies because what they did was really sneaky. They sued the companies for $1 billion. And the companies, these 3 companies had said, we made $1 billion profit, and so we owe $250 million in tax, and we've paid it. The police and their criminal colleagues took control of these companies using the documents taken from my office, sued them for $1 billion, and then and wiped off the profit. So they said, hey, when these companies made $1 billion, they owed $250 million tax, but because they've lost exactly $1 billion, that means they made no profit. So, you know, Russian IRS give us back $250 million, right? And of course, they had bribed the tax people. So the tax people get this notice asking for $250 million. Now, you would think that they would do a full investigation before returning $250 million of government. No, they return the money in one day.
Yeah.
And then the police officers and the tax officers all get on jets and they fly to Dubai and they go to that Palm Island you see in the movies and they start buying property on Palm Island, right? So Sergei caught this.
Wow.
And he turned them all in. And the next thing that happened was the same people he caught arrested him, and they put him in jail, and they start torturing him in a Russian prison, saying, change your story, say we're innocent, say that your client, Bill Browder, stole this money, but change your story. And Sergei, having practiced law and tax in Russia all his life, he really kind of believed in the system because the system used to work. So he really thought he was going to get his big day in court where he was going to show that these were really the criminals. And a year goes by and they've got to have the trial or let him go because they can only hold him a year. And instead of giving him his day in court, he got really ill. He needed an emergency operation, like an appendicitis, where it's an easy operation, but if you don't get it, you're going to be dead, right? Because your appendix blows up and your body gets poisoned, you're dead in 24 hours. So he needed this easy operation. And instead of giving it to him, they put him in a cement room, had 8 guys they handcuffed him. They had 8 guys with, riot batons beat him. And then they left him to die on the floor to kill the witness who wouldn't change his story.
Wow.
So yeah, when that happened, first of all, I never could have imagined anything like this happening, and I was his boss, and I was responsible for him. But interestingly enough, the hedge fund manager, this William Browder, whose companies had been stolen, and Sergei had been asked, change your story, say William Browder did it, say Bill did it, and Sergei wouldn't do that, and because Bill didn't do it, but he felt responsible too. I mean, he would have. Or that Sergei just changed his story. I mean, say Bill Browder killed the guy with the candlestick with Colonel Mustard in the study, right? I mean, say anything, just get out of jail.
Just get out of jail.
And so we had 2 people who felt really responsible, his boss and Bill, me, his boss and Bill. And we decided to do something a little crazy, which was we decided to go Dirty Harry and hunt down the people who stole this money and killed Sergei to hide it. And so we just, Bill just said, all my financial advisors who, investigate how much money a company's making and whether we should buy it or not, you're not doing that anymore. You're following the stolen money. And all the lawyers, all you're doing is coming up with police cases to put these guys in jail with our findings. And so we started tracing the money and putting together these cases, but we realized everybody's bribed in Russia. So we needed to get political support on our side. So we decided to make some YouTube movies to go to the Russian public and show everybody what horrible crooks these killers were. And so how you have police officers who are being paid, $6,000 a year, and they've got $3 million worth of property in their mother's name, a fleet of Porsches, and they're flying on private jets, right? And they're Facebooking their entire social life, having parties all over Moscow and in these expensive expensive restaurants. And so I made these movies. I found a young blogger who was popular, but not like this huge thing. And his name was Alexei Navalny. And I showed him my videos. And he was just like, this is so cool. Somebody's finally going to go after these people. I want to be your distribution thing. Channel. I want to send your movies out to my 300,000 followers. And so Alexei Navalny became our distribution thing. And then he, seeing those videos, decided to make his own. And unlike us, because we were just going after the killers of Sergei, he went after the oligarchs. He went after Putin. He went after he went after Medvedev. And so I was getting 1 million views. Alexei Navalny gets like 100 million views, right, on his stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't get any action. And at the end of the day, the Russians protected everybody. And so what we then did was change gears. We went to the US government and we said, we want to create a sanctions regime named after Sergei Magnitsky in honor of him that will prevent human rights abusers and corrupt people from coming to the United States. And so were blocked by that. The Obama administration blocked us because they were trying to make nice with Russia at the time. We went over the Obama administration's head to Congress, and Congress passed it, and then Putin struck back by saying he's going to cancel Americans' rights to adopt Russian children.
Yeah.
And I should say that our act only applied to human rights violations and the people who killed Sergei. It didn't cover corruption. So at that point, we then start tracing all their money, and we find all their money going all over the world, and we don't have a way to get that money. So we went back into Congress and said we want to change the Magnitsky Act to add corruption. And that's when Putin went nuts. And that's when Putin, if you remember, he sent a Russian lawyer to Trump Tower because Trump was running for president in 2016. And he sent a lawyer to Trump Tower to make a deal. Said, if with Donald Trump Jr., said, if your dad becomes president, right, if he kills these sanctions, we'll have great relations with you and we'll let you start adopting the kids again. And we found ourselves in this crazy fight with the Russian government, with this crazy Russian attorney going into Trump Tower and flying congressmen to Russia to then come back and say bad things about us. But at the end of the day, we got the second Magnitsky Act and Obama signed it into law. And now we chase criminals all over the world in Sergei's name, taking their ill-gotten money.
Fascinating. I like I told you before, and I know that some of the people, Fiona Hill, so many other names, have said that it reads like a spy novel, but it's really not because it's real. And that's the thing that's amazing about it. Listen, it goes without saying, we always run out of time, Jameson, and there's so much more to talk about. So we'll have to do this again and get into some of the more broad global impact of not just your work, but what the Russian government under the hands of Putin, and now with the centralized rule that he has, how that's impacted so many things globally. But thanks for being with us this morning. How can folks get a copy of the book as we wrap up this morning?
Thanks for having me. I'll be glad to come back.
All right. Listen, thanks for being with us, Jameson. I'll let folks know how to get a copy of the book, and we'll do this again sometime. Sound good?
All right, great. Thank you.
All right, man. Sounds good. Talk to you soon. What a fascinating story. I mean, it reads like a spy novel. The number is 773-763-9278. Stay tuned. Keep it locked in for more of Choose Views. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. The book that we were just talking to Jameson Firestone about is Rule of Lies, My Wild Ride Through Chaos, Corruption, and Murder in Putin's Russia. So get yourself a copy of it. As I agree with our listener down in South Carolina, Rissa, who says it's a movie. It reads like a movie. And here's the crazy thing. It's true. And I was reminded that it's a BFD, not a big AD. Joe Biden said that. So thank you, Kurt, for reminding us of that. Someone that is making sure that, or is on her own wild ride, I guess is probably a good way of putting it, and making sure that people are on the ride with her, is the chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, who's been with us before on a number of occasions. She's kind of my other road dog. Good morning, Anderson Clayton, and welcome back to Choose Views.
Good morning, Richard Chew. Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's good to hear your voice. I know you're, like always, on the road, literally. I would check the miles in your pickup truck, and I would check your frequent flyer miles and all the other things, because you are always on the move. But that's what it takes right now. I mean, you have been one of the voices that's just said, listen, y'all, we need to get out here in all parts of North Carolina and frankly all parts of the country to let people know the Democrats are on the move. We're excited and we're putting the work in. Talk to us about what that's been like the last few weeks.
Well, we're on the way right now. We're going to Polk County today. We'll be in Rutherford County today. So thinking about western North Carolina counties that were hit by Hurricane Helene and also ravaged by that natural disaster, that we're trying to get a new member of Congress out here elected, Jamie Ager, who's the Democrat that's running against the former Republican nominee, Chuck Edwards, who, as everybody hopefully knows by now, is no longer running for that any longer because even his own party said he needed to step away from that seat. And so we're trying to make sure we get out everywhere, because you can either talk about something or you can show up and you can actually be about something. And I think that right now people across this state and across this country really need people that are willing to show up, and that includes candidates and it includes the party as well. And so we're trying to make sure that we do that as best we can, but it means early mornings on the road and going through the hills and the hollers of western North Carolina right now.
Well, that's what it takes. I mean, I met a good friend of yours this weekend that we talked about that in terms of the Howard Dean strategy is what folks like you, Anderson, are doing in the state of North Carolina. And frankly, when you're talking with other Democratic chairs in different states, that's what it takes. That's what you guys have put together to say we got to go to every corner, every county, every district in our state to win back state legislative offices, and that be the foundation for us taking back and keeping, not just taking back Congress this time. And you and I talked about this when we were together in March. It's not just taking back these seats, it's keeping them. And it's keeping them by delivering, right?
Yeah, and talking about how and what Democrats have done. And then I think that we saw, at least I saw a really good video of that recently with the mayor of New York actually bringing back up policies that have been instituted in New York for decades, but just making videos about it, making people aware of it, educating folks about what actually does government do well for you and what does it do right now that maybe you don't know about and that you've never had access to before just because someone hasn't told you about it. Because oftentimes they say that, too, about generational wealth and the way that it's accumulated, right? People who don't know about the ways in which to do that, to start a 401k, to match your 401k, to do all of the things that folks need to do in investing in the stock market. It's not something that people automatically know about. And I feel like that is the same thing that can be said for civic education, right? And the way in which that we've got to educate folks right now about this election cycle. And so I hope that each and every single person listening to this right now is getting involved, that you are doing something, whether that means that you're knocking on doors or you're making phone calls to get people out to the polls this year, whether you're saying, hey, I'll be the one that shuttles people to the polls this year because it needs to be, as my vice president says, too big to rig this year in every way, shape, and form, too.
One of the things, knowing that having you on my little segment of Something to Chew On earlier in the show, is that talks about this because I know how much energy you bring to the conversation, Anderson. Don't let anyone fool you into apathy. Is a phrase that I use this morning, and how to break through that, first of all, is to not believe the naysayers and to get with people like yourself and many others that you've recruited and built to such a strong team to make sure that the data's out there, that the numbers are out there. We're leading. We have a commanding lead right now when it comes to healthcare, entitlements, inflation, and cost of living in terms of the trust narrative that Democrats have over Republicans. And that's not just on a federal level. You know this as well as, if not better than most, that's on a state level as well. Talk about how voters, in your observation and in your experience, are trusting more of what Democrats are saying and getting done.
I mean, I think that, like, to go to the point that you just made earlier, that it goes back to the representative that you have and also how hard that they are actively doing constituency services and working in their communities. You know, you met him when you came to North Carolina back in March, but Representative Dante Pittman is always somebody that I reference and I talk to when I think about that's a Democrat that's doing good work in North Carolina right now, but also just a public servant who's doing his job right now. And I think that everybody cares a lot about, you know, the values that you have and the values that you're going to fight for, but they really care about when they call your office, do they get an answer back? And is it responsive? And do they feel like that their elected official is in community and working on behalf of them instead of working for big corporations right now, like we see a lot of our politicians doing, and also Donald Trump with tariffs that are impacting, right, communities and small businesses across North Carolina. It doesn't bode well for the average person thinking that you're actually working for them. And I think that we've seen Democrats time and time time again doing that across our state. I give a big shout out to my Attorney General right now, Jeff Jackson, who is out there single-handedly taking on Duke Energy and trying to make sure that Duke Energy is held accountable for the fact that they're asking for an 18% rate hike in North Carolina for an energy rate. And so if you are anywhere in the southeastern part of the country, Duke Energy also services you, and Jeff Jackson is fighting for your energy rates too, because people are looking at their power bills every single month and going, oh my God, how on earth could this be so much money? And we just actually had a family out of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, who was reported this last week that it was a family of 4 folks that were in a house that died because they did not have access to their energy company had cut off, or their utility company had cut off their power a week and a half before, and they all were found in the house dead. And I'm like, you cannot tell me right now that the average people or the average person doesn't understand what's going on and how high costs are and how much their elected officials are not doing something about it right now.
And the solution to that, to the opposition voice, is not, well, go find a job, work harder, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When your power company raises the rates to the point where you can't afford to keep your power on, that's not a go find a job, go pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's a systemic problem. So kudos to the AG down there for the work because it doesn't just impact North Carolina, it impacts the region, as you just said. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Duke Energy is the largest energy monopoly in the southeastern part of the United States. It impacts the whole country, in my opinion, because when you can take on an energy monopoly in one area of the United States, you can do it in others. And that's what we're seeing right now across our country is corporate consolidation, and it's what's made prices skyrocket to the point where there's not competition. And it's why that we need elected officials right now who want to go up there and go up there to D.C., but not just to D.C., but to every state capital and take on monopolies right now that are making costs extremely high for the average constituent in America.
Yeah, I understand we're going to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about what's recently happened with Governor Stein and this veto and with regard to voting, and then a few other things that you, through your organization, are taking on with regard to Omnibus, 1,000 Days, the district run. But let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Anderson Clayton and Chew's Views. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you are just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew. We're talking with North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton. And some big news is taking place in North Carolina literally yesterday, today, with regard to voting and election bills. Talk to us, Anderson, about what the Republicans had been doing and what Governor Josh Stein said, oh, no, not on my watch.
Look, Republicans are always on something in North Carolina trying to disenfranchise voters across this state. Their recent effort was trying to pass House Bill 958, which was a voter suppression bill that would restrict the days of early voting in North Carolina. Right now, we've got 17 days of early voting. They wanted to limit that to 10. Take away days of Sunday voting, which include, souls to the polls, thinking about the history of in Black churches and in Black communities going to church on Sundays and going to the voting booth afterwards. And that's something that historically our faith leaders have taken a huge role in our Black communities across this entire country. But it's just restricting and targeting Black and brown voters, and also trying to take away college campus voting sites as well, and restrict student voters on college campuses. And yesterday we got to go to the governor's mansion and we got to watch Governor Stein veto that bill to make sure that before the 2026 general election that we're not seeing Republican voter suppression efforts have even more impact in North Carolina than they already do right now, because we still have voter ID laws on the books in this state, and we still have Republicans that have done everything they can to restrict access to polling sites across North Carolina too.
What impact have the Republicans had on relief, the hurricane relief, and the natural disaster relief there in the state? I know that federal dollars are a part of this, but what have Republicans done to essentially block or affect that not happening in a way? Because this is an ongoing story. Talk to us about that, Anderson.
I mean, the fact is, it's been 2 years since Hurricane Helene happened, and we're still less than 15% of federal funds have been released to Western North Carolina. You still have people that are living in tents and trailers and also have been displaced from their houses still and can't go back to them because they haven't gotten federal help. And when you've got a Republican president who promised that he came to Western North Carolina, sat in Swannanoa, and made the promise to people across the state that he was going to help Western North Carolina, and you've also got the lack of leadership again from people like Chuck Edwards and whoever Republicans put up to replace him in that sense too, will not, I think, have an administration that is going to help support them because they have not already. And that just goes to show you, places like Appalachia and rural America that they claim to care about, Republicans don't give a damn about, and they never have, to be honest with you.
Well, and that's part of the problem when we talk about state legislatures. And I've said this for so long, and I know you know this as a chair, but, the states having the right people in our state legislative offices is so critically important, because when the federal government doesn't do what they're supposed to do, particularly now under this Trump administration, Anderson, the state legislators, if we have the right people in place, at least we can get things through. We can at least allocate funds and release monies that are there so that when there's a disaster like this, that things can get done. But the Republicans have continued to block. Not only was the budget an issue, but now we've got this with regard to hurricane relief. And they're going to get after rural voting by blocking where people can go to vote and how votes can be thrown out. So when we control stuff, we get stuff done. It's just those.
You also have to have a legislature, though, there, Richard Chew, that has a rainy day fund or something like that. And I'll be honest with you, my Republican legislature has been so fiscally irresponsible with their money over the last decade and a half that they've been in charge of this state, because they have been giving away money to private school vouchers in the state of North Carolina. We have the most unaccountable out of the entire country. North Carolina is ranked number 1 for how unaccountable our private school voucher program is, because it does not matter how much money you make in the state of North Carolina. You could be a quadrillionaire. It doesn't matter. If you wanted to get $7,000 to send your kid to a private school in this state, you absolutely could. And the state legislature has made that fund for private school vouchers so large that they couldn't, if they wanted to, help people in Western North Carolina like they needed to, because instead they're too busy, again, patting the pockets of the people that have put them in office, which, again, it tends to be corporations and people who don't want to pay their fair share in taxes in the state of North Carolina right now.
It's true.
Lord.
And it's true throughout other states in the country where Republicans are in control. That same, and I know you've visited a number of states in addition to your work there in North Carolina, but that's also one of the problems that we're seeing in red states. And the voters, I don't want to say that they don't get it, but they don't seem to be willing to vote against it because they get caught up in the cultural issues rather than the economic issues, which they say matter more. But at the end of the day, that doesn't seem to be the case. What you're doing to reset the narrative, though, is going out and like you said earlier, making sure people are aware of the fact that the Republicans aren't getting things done. Anderson, talk a little bit about your omnibus, momnibus, 1,000 days. I mean, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but you got some stuff going on down there. Talk about omnibus for a moment.
We've got everything going on in North Carolina right now. Like I said, we're going out to do a district tour. I'm with Lakeisha Womack today out in Polk County because we want to make sure, to your point, that we are getting all over and across North Carolina, because I think that the way in which that we defeat Republican propaganda that they have put out into these communities for so long is that we actually show up in them and show them what a Democrat actually stands for. Because a lot of Republicans, whether that be the state legislators or also the members of Congress that represent these districts, have not been out to these districts. And it is because of the fact that states like North Carolina and also every single one in the South has been gerrymandered to obliteration, right, by Republicans who are so scared of voters that they don't know what to do. And that's exactly what we heard yesterday when we had Governor Stein veto that bill from our House Minority Leader, Robert Reeves, talking about how, when the voting rights bill came down, or the Voting Rights Act, and Republicans gutted debated the Voting Rights Act in Congress this last year, North Carolina did not go through a whole wave of redistricting again like every other southern state did because we had already been through it. And I just think that for so long, people have kept their eyes off the South, and I'm hoping that people are waking up to realizing how important this region of the country is. And I know at least my state is, because I feel it where I am in, whether I'm in Burt County or Bladen County or Beaufort County. And it's been across the state, we are energized and we're excited because we know that we've got to send a U.S. Senator to Congress this year with Roy Cooper, and also make sure that we keep Justice Anita Earls on the North Carolina State Supreme Court in every way, shape, and form, too.
Without a doubt. And you committed to Democrats and really you committed to everybody in the state, but primarily Democrats, to have a 100 county strategy, speaking of counties. And that's goes, again, it harkens back to what Howard Dean had in his mind years ago with a true 50-state strategy. You're leaving no stone unturned, and you're making it clear that you want to have a Democrat on every ballot in every single district. Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I think it's important. We saw it across the state or across the country this year, too, in places like Idaho, South Carolina, places that also filled every single one of their state legislative races on the ballot because Democrats are tired, sick and tired, I think, of being in states where they go to the ballot box and they don't have somebody to vote for. And it harms, right, our ability to tell voters that we're fighting for them when they don't see us doing it. And I heard somebody talk about it earlier. His name is Carlos Eduardo Espina. He's actually like a famous TikToker, at least in that sense. He's got like 14 million followers on there. And he said, there's a way to lose, right? And people actually, he said, when you're playing a sports game, like there's a difference in the World Cup and losing, 3-0 and going into overtime and battling it out in a way that, your fans are proud to see. And I heard him say that, and I compared it back to politics. I was like, yeah, like people really do want to see Democrats go a second and a third round, even if they get knocked down. But like, it is about how much we get back up and we fight. And to me, I think a lot of times voters, especially in these rural areas, have not seen Democrats fight for them in any way, shape, or form. When we don't run people for elected offices there, when we don't show up to their city councils and their county commissioner meetings and talk about data centers and flock cameras and things that are bipartisan issues right now, but that are really big in these communities and that people want to hear elevated up, right? They don't just want to see it sit at the ground level. And I think that we've got really good local and state Democratic elected officials in North Carolina doing that, but I also think we've got it across the country too.
It's interesting, Anderson, in that point. It's about, I think about representation, and you understand that as a strong, smart, vibrant, energetic woman that understands representation as a woman. I can speak to it as an African-American male. But even for voters, seeing Democrats run is another form of representation, knowing that we've got folks in the race, in the fight, even if we don't win. Such a great point that you made, and it's a nuanced point, but a lot of times people don't see it or get that part of. Even if we don't win, we run to let voters know we're fighting for you. So come out with this next time. If we don't get it this time, come back next time. But if we don't have anybody on the ballot, they're like, well, why should I vote in the first place? So that's such great vision and leadership on your part, which leads me to our last question. We know that Roy Cooper is doing well. We know Democrats are doing well all over the country, and we don't take it lightly. We don't rest on our laurels. But the word is from people that I talk to, and I'll let you say something to this real briefly, about you being our next national DNC chair. That's out there. I know I probably made you blush a little bit, but your energy and your passion is definitely on the tips of the tongues of a lot of people. So I want to congratulate you on what folks are saying about you in that space, Anderson. You're doing a great job.
Oh Lord, I'm focused on North Carolina. We got a Supreme Court to flip in every way, shape, and form, and hopefully, when we do what we need to do down here, it's going to really help the nation and give a lot of power back. So we're excited about it, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, what's interesting about that in terms of the national your national appeal is it really is what you just said, though, in response to that. You're focused on getting things done there. Let's get this in place. Let's get this locked down. And then we build out from there. And you're doing that, and so many other state chairs are doing the same kind of work. So we're proud of what you're doing, and keep up that work. Anderson, good to have you on again. Real quickly, how can folks find you? How can folks get involved with the work that you're doing, not just in North Carolina, but for the country at large?
Look, go to ncdp.org and get involved today. If you were listening out of this out of Warren County or anywhere in North Carolina, and even if you're not, if you're across the country right now, we'd love to have you involved. There are virtual ways to sign up to phone bank and to even come into the state if you'd like to. And so just sign up online, ncdp.org, or also follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else that you may like to at NCDem Party. So thanks, y'all. Thanks, Richard Chew.
All right. Thanks, Anderson Clayton. Be well. Drive carefully. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right, guys. What can I say behind that other than follow her, get involved with her, no matter where you are in the country? I mean, the state, the race that she talked about, we all know now, the Senate race, Roy Cooper. That's a big one. We get that one. That's another box we get to check. So make sure you get involved no matter where you are in the country. It matters, y'all. Showing up matters. And if you can show up from a distance, then do that too. 773-763-9278 is the number. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's News. Oh, Lord have mercy. Good morning and welcome back to Chew's Views. And I'm Richard Chew if you're just tuning in. Heartland Signal has a free newsletter. Every week, Heartland Signal's head of research, Aaron Kleinman, delivers Radio Free America, highlighting stories that matter in state politics but aren't getting enough attention. Subscribe today to heartlandsignal.com/newsletters. States matter, y'all. We just had the DNC chair of North Carolina on with us. She's been with us before, Anderson Clayton. You want to lock in the work that she's doing. And Dooney Isaacson, who is representative in Ohio, also the minority leader of the party. Going to hang out with us for a few minutes now. Good to have you back on the show, Representative. Thanks for being with us again.
Good to be here. Thank you. And I should say it's pronounced like Sunny with a D, Dunny.
Dunny with the D, with an S. Word Sunny, but this case would be Dunny. Wow, it is good to have you back. And what's been happening since we had you on a few weeks ago? I mean, a lot of changes are taking place in Ohio. We've got some big races, the state with the Senate, as well as with the governor's race. Talk to us about what's going on.
Look, we don't get to say that often in Ohio, right, that it's a good time to be a Democrat. Now we need to keep that going for the next few months. We got to keep that going for the next few months. But there is no doubt that the momentum you are reading, in the New York Times and the New Republican and Politico about, is this happening in Ohio? That momentum is real. We feel it on the ground every day. We see it both in our data, but also what our candidates are experiencing on the doors. There is a real hunger for something different, and that's showing up in particularly, everyone knows Ohio loves Sherrod Brown. We've loved Sherrod Brown a long time. Sherrod Brown was fighting on affordability and property, and populism, and before it was cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like Sherrod's been doing it his whole career, and he's running for the Senate to finish what he started, right? When he was the chair of the banking committee and was reining in banking and really making progress on housing. But I don't think anyone saw Dr. Action coming.
No, I would agree with that. Yes, keep going.
And she has just been a total force. I'm meeting with her right after this to talk about just how, we can help her finish strong. But everywhere she goes, people come out of the woodwork. She did an event in Meigs County and Vinton County. We're talking deep Southeast Ohio.
Yeah.
Places that Democrats have not really been competing in and won for 20 years. And people just come out for her. Yeah. There's an excitement. There's an energy. There's an inherent trust that she's built. And she built it the hard way.
I was talking about that earlier, so thank you for reminding us of that. Democrats are leading in healthcare in terms of trust with voters across the country. About the average is about 31% when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to affordability, and it's really amazing how that has become more and more kind of the resounding issue, the trust factor that Democrats on a state level, and then in this case, these are two statewide elections, both Senate and for governor, that Republicans are starting to realize that Democrats don't muck it up as badly as Republicans do. Talk a little bit about what your experience has been there.
Well, just think about the contrast that Ohioans are facing in this cycle. This is the affordability election, right? That is, we all know it. It's been that way since, inflation was super high under President Biden, and just the cost of living has continued to balloon and skyrocket under President Trump with groceries and gas. And so this is an election that is fundamentally about the cost of living. And on the one hand, in Ohio, you have a candidate running who is a billionaire who flies around the plane on his private jet, flies around the state on his private jet, and made his money promising life-saving drugs that didn't save lives.
Nope.
On the other side is someone who grew up in the Mahoning Valley in Youngstown, spent a portion of her childhood experiencing homelessness, living in a tent with her sibling, eventually made and paid her way through medical school, became a, family and pediatric doctor, then went into public health to take a broader view, served under 5 administrations, including mostly Republican administrations, serving the public interest, right? And being a physician and a doctor, not a politician. That contrast could not be starker in the affordability election of 2026, when Ohio families are like, who understands what we're going through, who relates to it, who has empathy for it, and who is going to bring the fight about it? Is it the person who thinks that Ohioans and Americans in general are suffering because of a lack of work ethic? Or is it someone who actually understands what it means to take care of other people? And so I think you couldn't have drawn this up. We, 2 years ago, Dr. Acton was on the trail with us, and it wasn't obvious then. I don't think that this is exactly what Ohio needs, but it's obvious now.
What's interesting too, Leader Isaacson, is that the contrast that you just laid out with Dr. Acton versus Vivek Ramaswamy is that it's clear that he doesn't actually get it. And some of the things that he said, and we talked about this a little bit the last time you were on, some of the things that he said on the campaign trail and not on the campaign trail, while he's spending 40% of his time outside of the state, shows that he's just not connected and doesn't get it you didn't think I'd slip that in on you, did you? He's spending that much time outside of the state. He doesn't get it. And then to talk about things like, we should end certain programs that are directly tied to people's bottom line. But the contrast that you drew is that she gets it because she's from the area. She genuinely understands what people are dealing with. She understands the unique budgetary concern of not having proper health care in place and what that can do to ruin a family. And that, I think, that's a message that you guys are doing such a great job of making sure that people are getting and they're hearing and they're feeling it. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so, we are focused on, in the House, as Dr. Acton hopefully becomes our next governor, how do we break the supermajority so she can actually govern when she wins, which means, and, in one of these seats, it's the last Republican held seat in Cuyahoga County, which is where Cleveland is.
Right.
And the representative there, it's a pretty middle of the road district, right? It's a true kind of, it maybe leans a little R, but it's a 50-50 district. Kind of mostly independent people, not a lot of, extreme views on either side. And for whatever reason, the representative there has gone full extreme MAGA to the point where he has become the poster child for how do we kick people off of Medicare and Medicaid? How do we limit their access? Went to D.C. to testify in front of Congress about it. And our candidate there is an oncology nurse, right, who is running because of how she has seen people get sicker and sicker, and the system is actually making them sicker. It's making them harder for them to access and afford their medicines. Right? And so she's running against a guy who is cheering on the lack of access, is actually championing decreasing access to healthcare. And so that is a contrast that shows up a lot. And now that is, it's most extreme in that race, in that district. But it's, to your point about trust, we see this in both in our polling and in our conversations that we have. If your number one issue is healthcare, you're voting for a Democrat.
Yeah.
because you've seen, especially in the last 2 years with what the Trump administration has done in partnership with state legislatures like Ohio's, it has just been to cut off. If you lived within 30 minutes of an urgent care clinic, it's probably 45 minutes now, right? If you were driving to your pharmacy, you're probably not able to access it now unless you live near a very big city. Right? It's harder to get obstetric care.
And that's putting even more pressure, not to interrupt you, Leader Isaacson, that's putting even more pressure on those facilities that are open, because now, I mean, it's like a good friend of mine said to me years ago about traffic. Traffic is like a funnel. Only a certain amount can go through at a certain time. And inevitably you're going to wait. And while you're waiting, you're burning gas, you're burning resources. And that's what's happening when it comes to our healthcare system when we close these non-urban or even suburban facilities, is that it's a funnel. Only a certain amount of people can be treated at a certain amount for over a certain period of time. It puts more pressure on the folks that are working there, top down, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's what folks have missed about what happened last year with the ugly bill, what happened earlier this year with subsidies with regard to the Obamacare subsidies. And all the rest, everything that's in between. I mean, more pressure because of economic loss, i.e. the tariffs, and more pressure because of this Iran war puts more pressure on the local communities to survive and to not even try to thrive, but just to survive. And then it puts that pressure on the regional facilities that try to treat people. I know you see this all the time. Talk a little bit about that as you can.
And it's to your point about, it affects the people who are, it narrows the access to the funnel. This is what I think is so important, particularly in my part of the state. I live in Cincinnati, but in the southern half of Ohio, along the Ohio River, going into southeast Ohio in Appalachia. When you decrease access to healthcare services in Appalachia, in rural parts of the state, you force people to make a choice. Do I drive the extra hour to make it to Cincinnati? Is my shoulder hurting enough? Do I think this is a heart attack? Mm-hmm. Right? Or am I going to get there in time to deliver this child? Or do you stay home, in which case, obviously, you risk, at worst, increase in death.
Yeah.
But what I think people miss is how tied into the healthcare that people in Cincinnati then get.
Yep.
Because if you're telling everyone east along the river all the way up to Gallipolis near West Virginia, you got to come to Cincinnati or Columbus for your health care. Well, then when your shoulder starts hurting in Cincinnati, or you're going to deliver your kid, there's less place for you to go.
Yep.
And it's driving your costs up pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
And so what I think we're seeing in Ohio, but not enough, when we need more of this in the country, but certainly something we're very focused on as a caucus, is we have to link these issues between Appalachia and our urban cores. Their healthcare outcomes influence our healthcare costs and outcomes. Whether their kids get enough, access to literacy training in school because they have enough teachers is going to impact our economy. And actually, if their kids aren't getting enough, you better believe that kids in downtown Cincinnati probably aren't getting enough. And so the future opportunity is, how do we link, particularly in healthcare and education, although not exclusively, but how do we link the healthcare outcomes, the educational outcomes between Appalachia and the urban cores across Ohio? And because once people get that their healthcare future and their educational futures are linked, I actually think it's much easier to form a coalition on a whole bunch of other issues. And this is where there's an opportunity particularly, and this is a little outside the scope maybe of where what you'll hear most Democrats talk about, but we have to build bridges to the MAHA movement, which, even though we disagree on vaccines and things like that, we can't ignore their concerns either.
Yeah.
Right? They're actually the concerns about the role that the pharmaceutical industry plays, the role of pharmacy benefit managers, the role that insurance companies play. Those are concerns that have long been Democratic concerns. We can't write them off because we have real disagreements over here. You got to find what do we agree, and let's build on that, because otherwise you just let them get away with it.
Yeah, that is a conversation that we all have to remember. Is that the consensus building allows us to get things done. hopefully faster because we've built we've put the bridge out and the bridge is working. So that is a big part of where we have to be. Leader Isaacson, we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about affordability. Let's talk about some of the issues that you're leading the party in Ohio as we make these moves forward. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you are just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew. We are talking with the minority leader of the Ohio House of Representatives. Leader Isaacson, tell us, I know you got to run this morning, got a busy morning. What is I guess you could say, for Ohioans as well as for folks throughout the country right now, when you think about voting for Democrats on a state level or on a federal level, what is it that you want people to hear and to really lock into right now?
I think the most important thing this election is to understand that the fact that the cost of living has skyrocketed, the fact that your groceries are so expensive, the fact that you get fewer access to fewer and fewer medicines that you can afford, that your doctor is farther away, that it takes longer to get an appointment, that your kid's school has fewer teachers, all of those things did not just happen to us. They are the result of choices and policies that have been pushed intentionally for a very long time. I have had a front row seat to it in the legislature. It is a direct trade to give the billionaires who own a football team $600 million of taxpayer money instead of spending the $600 million on lowering your energy bill. Right? That is a direct trade. You can invest in the infrastructure that will lower your energy bill, or you can invest in the infrastructure that will enrich these billionaires who own a football team. And if you expand that attitude out every year for decades, you get what we've gotten, which is an incredibly great place to live for the incredibly rich and a pretty hard place to live for everyone else. And what Democrats, I think, have finally wrapped our arms around in a pretty collective way is we have to do something about that first. It has to be our number one priority, not everything else, not all of our other hopes and dreams that we've long harbored. We have to bring people's cost of living down now. And the exciting thing is, you don't just have to do that by spending more government money. There's actually a huge amount you can do to bring people's costs down by building more housing, unlocking a construction boom, right? Increasing access to Ohio has this clean energy companies, solar and wind, are dying to come to Ohio. We have so much opportunity here. We could bring energy bills way down just with the backlog we've already got in solar and wind. Not to mention unlocking everything we haven't even, explored. And so what Democrats are embracing is an agenda that is both exciting, it's growth oriented, it's about the future, and it's not just more, government benefits. It's actually, how do we grow the economy in a way that brings your costs down? Not how do we grow the economy in a way that creates more and more billionaires, which is, so we've had, Ohio was ranked number 1 for business by CNBC. That's cool, but it's actually not cool because it hasn't led to an increase in lifespan. It hasn't led to an increase in literacy. It hasn't led to more good paying jobs for more people who can save up for retirement and take their families out on vacation. It hasn't brought your grocery prices down. So it actually has no bearing on people's lives. Who cares that we're number 1 for business? It matters if you're number 1 for business if you then translate it to how people are experiencing their day-to-day life. And Democrats actually have an agenda that will make that translation happen, that will say this growth is going to lead to your life getting better and less expensive, more opportunity for you. That has to be the growth agenda that we have. And I'm excited to report that with Sherrod Brown, with Dr. Acton, and with our efforts to break the supermajority, that is what we are pursuing in Ohio at the moment. It took us a long time to get here, but we finally feels like arrived.
We're on the precipice of that, and it is the connective tissue that I think is a message throughout the entire country. It's been great talking with you again. Minority Leader of the Ohio House of Representatives, Donnie Isaacson. Thank you for hanging out with us this morning. Have a safe rest of the day. Keep up the fight. We'll have you back on again before we get to the midterms. But
sounds good.
Thanks for being in the fight, sir. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for everything you're doing.
All right. Appreciate you. Talk to you
care.
soon. All right. Bye-bye. All right, guys. He's that legislative leading voice in Ohio, representative and minority leader of the House of Representatives, Donnie Isaacson. He gets it, just like Anderson Clayton. They both get it. They're state leaders. And I say this all the time, guys, and I say it because I mean it. If you are trying to find something to do, if you feel like, man, Chew, I get it, I hear you, but I just don't know where to start. Start with the folks. I mean, if you're in a state that's blue and you've got the representation in the state that you believe is what's needed, then look to some of these other states that are fighting for support, that are fighting for volunteers. And you don't have to travel to North Carolina if you live in Massachusetts or in California or in Illinois for that matter. You don't have to physically travel there to be a resource. Reach out to Anderson Clayton. You can Google her, and she's everywhere. You can Google her and say, Anderson, I'm in wherever. I'm in Boston. I'm in Philly. I'm in Chicago. I'm in Denver. I'm in San Francisco. We're good. How can I help? That's what they need. That's what Representative Isaacson needs. They need State Representative Isaacson needs. They need folks from other communities to say, I want to get involved to help. I've said this so many times. We have to give ourselves permission to not live in the silo that we, for whatever reasons, have put ourselves into. That happens to all of us. By looking at another community and saying, I want that community to thrive, to survive and thrive. And if I can do something to help in that space, then I can do it. And contacting a state leader, if you're in another part of the country where your part of the country, your district, your community is doing okay, then reach out to one of these other state folks and say to them, how can you activate me? If I need to make phone calls, if I raise some money, and the list goes on. Let them tell you. They'll tell you. Trust me. Anderson knows what to tell you about how to help. Representative Isaacson, Minority Leader Isaacson, knows what to tell you how to help when you're 1,000 miles away. And they are appreciative of this. I've had so many people reach out to me and say, Richard, I reached out to someone that you suggested we talk to on a state legislative basis or state leader, and they got me involved in this or they got me involved in that. And the next thing you know, you answered that question about what is it that I can do? How do I get out of my silo? How do I get to work? That's what they need. And when we keep doing that, then it goes back to what was said earlier with regard to representation. When people see, and this back to what we were talking about with Anderson, when people see that folks are running in all districts and all counties, that inspires other folks to get involved. Maybe not necessarily to run, but to be part of a campaign and to provide the support that our folks need, that our voices need. And when Minority Leader Isaacson talked about the number of people who are starting to, in rural communities, see Democrats differently and not be as partisan as maybe they have been in the past, and those votes start to come our way, that's that masses of behinds, as one of my coaches used to say years ago, with masses of asses getting involved to do the work. And it's hard to be, momentum is an interesting thing, guys. When you don't have it, it's like you're dying for air or dying for water. But when you've got momentum, you pick up so much steam and so much energy, and you bring some people with you. And honestly, when we get closer to midterm elections, if we're working now, if fighting in the same direction now rather than fighting against each other, it's going to make it so much easier to push back on what the Republicans are going to continue to do. And trust me, after Labor Day, the money they're just going to open up the coffers and unload on a lot of these state elections. They're going to unload on a lot of the federal elections. They're going to unload on a lot of the governor's races that are going on, because they have no policies. They have no ideas. They have no true message that's to take the country forward. They just don't. So now is the time for us to make sure we're shouldering up together and make sure that we're paying attention to the smallest of races. By winning those and continuing to do what we've been doing, That's why we keep that momentum, and we keep that momentum all the way through November 3rd. I believe that is why we start now. We don't wait till October. Their campaign of hate and chaos and frustration and anger, it's coming, and it's going to come hard, and it's going to come loud. So make sure you're plugged in, guys. Do that for the belief that you say you have, and what we can get done as the progressive liberal Democrats. We're going to keep talking about it. I promise you that we would once we get inside of 90 days. I warned you. I told you this is going to be a big part of our message. But thanks, everybody, for paying attention and listening today, for being a part of our show. Make sure you check out Joan today from 2 to 5. Make sure you're checking out Patty Vasquez this afternoon. And stay tuned next for the Stephanie Miller Show. As always, remember to take a deep breath and make your life count, because we will see you tomorrow.